This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. My name is Shawn. I'm an innovation strategist. What we do is we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life. Oh, wow. Hey, everyone. This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. In this pod, what we do is we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life, change your career, your business, but most importantly, your life. And we have a really special guest today. You know, on this podcast, we don't really introduce the guest, but, you know, I'm really honored for him to come on. Robert Tyndale, owner of Version Me Media. Thank you for coming on.
Yes. No, thank you for having me, Shawn. I've been excited, and I've been actually just got to pay some tribute and love to you. Shawn, what you've built in terms of this podcast from its inception to now is a beautiful thing.
Well, let me tell you, though, the reason why I haven't had you on, there's a very good reason why I have you. I was nervous to have you on.
Nervous?
I was nervous to have you on because I didn't think that the pod was ready for Bobby to come on. No, just from an aesthetic perspective, I know that you are the GOAT when it comes to aesthetics and design, and just like, you know, watching your stuff is just like a thing of beauty. And I just, you know, just being on your pod and you're seeing this like 5-camera setup, and it just looks absolutely stunning. And I know the level of production you put in. And so I'm like, it's not ready. It's not ready for Bobby. And I don't know if we'll ever be ready for Bobby, to be honest with you. But this is like, we're literally like I want to say like a year into this.
Okay.
And now we finally had you on because I think we are ready. We're ready for Bobby.
Well, this is a beautiful setup, Shawn. Like, between the lighting to the aesthetics to just the overall design, this is so dope. This is so wicked. And I think this is like a reflection of like kind of like your mindset. Because I know, Shawn, you're all about sort of like producing like high quality content that can stand alone for itself. And to kind of, again, see that progress that you have and how you've sort of brought this and made this your own. This is so beautiful.
Well, man, I really appreciate you having you on. So what we do on this pod is we just break down some dangerous ideas. At the end, we'll have some like hot topics, that things that are kind of happening in the culture. But I want to hit you with the first dangerous idea, which is this idea that black culture is culture for some reason. And this has been the case for the last, I would say, number of decades, maybe even longer. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm starting to see, maybe it's because of the fate of hip hop. Hip hop is kind of like on a downward trend. But for some reason,
you think so?
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
But if you break down music, you know, hip hop has dominated music. If you look at fashion, I mean, you know, black culture has dictated fashion for so many decades. Even LVMH, which is, you know, probably arguably the most sought after brand on the planet, you know, hiring Pharrell as like their lead designer on the men's side. You look at, you know, the way that we speak to each other, right? The way that, you know, slang, like you see kids, no matter where they are around the world. You look at K-pop. K-pop is like an influence from black culture. Most of modern music, rock, jazz, blues, everything is black culture. And why is that the case? Why is stand-up comedy, I'm against, all my goats are all black comedians. Why is black culture the culture?
That's a good question.
How did it happen?
And you know what? It's I think sometimes this stuff comes like born out of friction, born out of roots. And like ultimately, like I remember I read this article maybe like a year ago or 2 years ago that kind of stated that like the #1 export that's coming out of the US States is black culture.
Wow.
And so when you think about it, like some of the biggest brands out there, where it's like from Spotify into what you just said, from the industries to the music to the fashion, like black culture is the #1 export. And, you know, when you dial that back, that like article that I was reading, and I can't quote where exactly it was from, but it was kind of articulating and showing that even though that is the #1 export, there's like a lack of ownership. There's a lack of like, sort of like the, you know, billionaires, millionaires, and multimillionaires, even though like black culture is doing these exports. And, you know, to kind of dial back to like, your question of like, well, why is that? I mean, that's just how it is. I can't explain it. And like, you know, like the other day, again, I was like going through in Black History Month that just passed in February. I came across this random article that was like stating about how the banjo, a banjo that was like a fundamental tool that like kind of now has been taken by relatively like country music, came out of like the black slaves, where that tool, that instrument was instrument that was used by black slaves, and it was never looked upon, it was frowned upon, it was like taboo. And then suddenly then the country music just then took that, adopted and utilized it.
Yeah.
And so when you think about black culture, whether again it's around like sort of again the blues, hip hop, or where we've seen it kind of where it is the modern day today, I mean, it's a good question. And I think it's just comes down to, I don't know, that's just like the identity. That's just like, it's just been that way.
Do you think that black culture will still, like, because it dictates so much of culture across all these different industries, will continue to have staying power? Because I think the internet culture is now becoming the new culture, and I think maybe it's because of the downfall of hip hop. Mm-hmm. And you don't think hip hop does it? I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, but if you look at even like number 1 hits or the songs in the top 10, they used to be all hip hop dominated, and now it's way more Latin, way more country, other forms of music, and it just the hip hop is not as relevant as it used to be.
Yes, but like I would say so. There's hip hop and there's like black culture. So like Afrobeats, for example, which is like a growing phenomenon and it's becoming like such a huge, powerful thing that's now influencing.
Burna can like sell out an arena when very few people in North America, like he's not like a mainstream artist here in North America, but globally Burna Boy is like a thing, you know?
And I think sometimes we forget, like when you look at North America, like black people are a minority group, but when you look at a global scale, black people are a majority. So we're a minority when you look at a global standpoint. And so from that framework alone, obviously when it comes to sort of music, roots, culture, food, all those kind of like pillars, you'll see that those will kind of manifest from a global stage of always having a global audience that will carry that weight. And so when you say like hip hop culture is on the decline, I believe that's because now people's like, again, are shifting in terms of taste. Right. However, there will always be a blanket of hip hop culture across everything.
What do you mean?
Like
a blanket of hip hop culture?
A blanket of hip hop culture. So whether it's around some of the beats, whether it's around some of the instrumentals, whether it's around even to how people, I want to say, kind of sometimes put a little bit of like that lyrics or the cadence that you kind of see. I was listening to, and I'm so bad of names, this one individual who came up with this one country song, and I can't think of his name, but like in his country song, it was like a traditional country song.
It's not like, okay.
And he's been catching a little bit of fire, but like he has like this one segment in it that he's basically rapping. And he has like a really awesome cadence to it, but he then goes back to the traditional like rhythm when it comes to country music. And that's where I kind of think that always when it comes to hip hop culture or ultimately urban music or just music as a whole, it always will have that kind of flavor to it.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's funny, like my friends know me as like, I love everything to do with black culture, although like stand-up comedians, I just resonate so much with black culture, even though I grew up as an Indian boy here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, where you didn't have like a huge black influence, but like I remember just like listening to rap music off like Encarta 95 and just being like, it's just something so human about you know the type of music and the people. I remember watching one of the most profound moments of my life is watching Chris Rock, one of his first stand-up specials in front of a black audience. To me, it was like a spiritual experience. I've never seen something like that before. Like him move an audience, the way that he moved people. I've never seen that, and I was hypnotized. And it's part of the reason why I became a speaker is like one person can have that impact. Man, that is incredible. And so it's always been a big part of my life. And it's just funny.
No, and that's so interesting. That's such a great story. Like what instantly popped in my mind when you were just telling that story was like when Kanye was doing his thing and blowing up, he like one of his first tours was like the Glow in Dark tour that kind of touched base here in Edmonton. And that was the first time where I kind of seen like a hip hop concert that was not a concert. Like it was like a full out production.
Right.
Like he had so many different dynamics to it, between his storytelling to it, obviously his intros, his outros, the just showmanship of everything, just elevated that whole experience. And I think that was like when I was like falling in love with like what Kanye was doing and producing as an artist. And more importantly, that's where I kind of realized that almost like the power of storytelling. And I think that's why kind of Black culture also has this seed, and where we see it kind of blankets across many different industries, is there's this kind of idea and concept of storytelling.
Yeah.
And just having a different take. And, you know, in some of your previous podcast episodes, you're kind of talking about sort of this topic of taste.
Yes.
And I think when it comes to taste, that can mean so much, and it's not something that you can kind of train, but it's something that you either have or you don't. And yes, you can develop it, and yes, you can foster it, but I think when it comes to cultures, and especially when it comes to, in my opinion, groups that are minority groups, they have this different take of taste, especially people who migrated and come to this country, because they got to work differently. They are bringing in some of their past cultures from back at home to here, and they're morphing it to kind of develop something new and something that's not the same,
right,
something unique. And so I think, yeah, taste is something that I think is such an important aspect when we talk about this kind of like topic of culture, because again, in this world that we live in, the internet, where, let's be blunt, the internet doesn't care about who you are, where you came from, your background, while it does completely. Because since like these social media platforms and algorithms are now creating so many different silos, it's like, well, it's only cultures, only these lifestyles that will be able to blanket sort of and penetrate things from like a larger scale or a global scale. And so I don't know, when I really think about sort of what am I bringing to the table, what is my community bringing to the table, and more importantly, what is like the Black community bringing to the table, I'm always fascinated, just trying to like digest that and figure it out.
So you're a guy that obviously has, like, if I think about and that's why I was worried to have you on the pod, because you're somebody that understands taste, like from design, production design, fashion. Obviously, you ran your own like basically fashion store, right? So this has always been sort of. I want to know, how do you teach taste? Can you teach taste to somebody? No,
because that's like saying, can you teach experience? Taste is experience.
Okay.
And so you got to get you got to experience and everything. So,
okay.
So part of the reason, so I had a clothing store called Room 322, which we specialize in creating and bringing into the city like lifestyle-based brands. So in a world that, like, at the time, like Ed Hardy was blowing up, Christian Auditor was blowing up, and all of these brands that had such a huge demand, we decided to go a different way, and we wanted to go with like streetwear culture. We wanted to go with varsity prep with this awesome brand called Brooklyn Circus. And to kind of take a step back prior to that, before I opened up my clothing store, I used to be a professional video game player. So I traveled the world. I've been to like Monza, Italy, Singapore, South Korea twice, up and down the States, all across Canada, all experiencing these different cultures, these different fashion styles, seeing these different, bottom line, worlds. And I was always saying to myself, why isn't this not in my city? How can I bring this to my city? And how can I begin the process of introducing some of these experiences to people in my city? And if it wasn't for that experience, then I would not have that taste. I wouldn't have that refinement. I wouldn't be able to kind of see this style or see this look and kind of put together in my head and say, hey, this is what I want to kind of style you as a customer or client that's coming into my store. And again, I think taste comes through experience. Right.
No, I love that. And it's almost like the outcome of your exploration. The outcome of your exploration was like developing taste. 100%. And I think part of taste is actually understanding what people want and what people like at the end of the day. But also, you could have people traveling around the world. I have friends that travel around the world. They look at different things and they come back and they have no taste. Okay, but also, taste is in the eye of the beholder at the end of the day. Yeah, the reason why I'm so passionate about this idea of taste is because it's like, I think it becomes so much more important now in like a world that is, everything is homogenized and AI driven, and like everything becomes just like very, how do you break through the noise? How do you cut through? To me, that's like so important today.
100%. And on that topic, I think that's why taste is going to be like an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, in a world that anyone relatively can like generate different pieces of content information through AI, anyone can go online because of our mobile phones that relatively a lot of people have exposure to. Well, why would I follow you? Why would I tune into your podcast when I could tune to hundreds of other podcasts or spend my time in the many different ways I could spend my time?
Don't tell people there's hundreds of different podcasts. But yeah, okay, yeah.
But like it comes down to your taste. So like it's funny, Shawn, when I think back about how we started to develop a relationship, I mean, it was the way that you talked. It was the way that you kind of your takes. It was your almost fashion style and aesthetics, and more importantly, your storytelling. And so I think when it comes to sort of people developing these independent brands, these online presences, just bottom line, trying to stick out from the stick out from everybody else, whether that's around your own small business, whether it's around your own corporate team, or even too if that's from just your neighbor. If it's not for your taste, your opinions, or just the way that you present yourself, then you're doing not only yourself a disservice, but you're doing the world a disservice.
Right. You know, this brings me to my second dangerous idea, which is this idea that because you're a content connoisseur, not only producing but consuming, is that short-term content has become a slot machine for creators. What does this mean? Like, every time you put up a post, it's like the algorithm sort of dictates, you know, how far that's going to go. And even and it's actually a blessing and a curse, because sometimes a great piece of content might get it might get the right distribution it deserves. And sometimes most of the time actually, great content just falls completely flat.
100%.
And it is the most, it's equally inspiring as it is depressing that you're working on something, you know, so hard, and it just doesn't get the love that it deserves because of this slot machine. It's blind luck almost. How do you feel about that as a content creator and as somebody that, you know, helps other organizations create content too?
Yeah. To be honest, I love it.
You love it?
I love it. And the reason why I'll say I love it is that I was having a great conversation with actually a mutual friend we were just talking about, Daniel Maddens, about how we were testing some YouTube videos. And I told him that I bet you that if you record a YouTube video, and he has all the fancy cameras, you know, he has cameras that cost a few $1,000s with the lens and things like that. He has like full out audio production, everything. And I said, I bet you anything, if you produce a cell phone based video, YouTube video, it will outperform all of your other videos. And he's like, no, it won't. I don't believe you. We'll see. So me and him both had this competition that what would happen if we put out a YouTube video in comparison to our highly produced, time-oriented content. And what happened is, end of the day, it outperformed all of our videos, all of our own videos on our respective channels. And the reason why, in my opinion, where I put my finger on it, it's because you stop caring about some of these details that you think people care about, and you get out of your own way and start to just work on trying to serve the people who will be watching it or serve your audience, then it's just so much better. Like, we live in a day and age that there's people who have full out multi-million-dollar production studios and people who are just filming in their closets. And some have small followings, while these people who are just shooting videos in their rooms and out in nature and things like that have millions of followers across the world. And the question's always like, well, why? And it's because they're just telling great stories. It's because they're dialing into kind of who they are. They're delivering a story, challenges, being authentic, all through connecting to that particular audience member. And I think as soon as you do more of that, as soon as you triple down on that and start to dial back on all these fancy little things and gears and things like that, I think that's just going to have more success.
So you believe that the story always wins?
100.
No matter how you shoot it, no matter who posts it, the story always wins.
100%. And the reason why people, in my opinion, like kind of suffer at that story and that kind of dynamic is people are not their authentic selves. That they put on, and I put on sometimes like a persona.
Right.
And when I put on that persona, it becomes a lot of work for me to then put on that layer. It puts a lot of work for me to go from Robert to Bobby T. Right. And so as soon as we can kind of become more comfortable or close the gap between our cameras and light action self versus who we are just in the day-to-day person.
So
and that's when we can start to build.
So what's interesting is that you're saying the reason why you told Daniel that this piece of content is going to be better is because, not because it looks UGC, it looks like it's, you know, filmed, it's very native. It's because it almost, you're not focused on all the production. You now can only focus on the story. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with like how it looks, right?
Like 100%. And like, don't get twisted. Of course, having all this fancy production and great lighting, it's an advantage. You'll stand out immediately, but it's not the thing that's going to give you that trajectory. It's not the thing that's going to make you continuously, consistently, necessarily hit those thresholds. And more importantly, hit those levels of, sure, whether it's going viral or just getting out there to your level of success. Because I think success is like, that's a dangerous term in my opinion.
Why?
Because what does that even mean? Success looks differently for everyone.
Yeah.
Like for some people, success is literally having a studio that I can just film and produce content in. For some people, success is, for some crazy reason, hitting those magical numbers that we're constantly chasing, whether it's 10,000, 1,000, 1 million, 500,000, like whatever those numbers are. And so the reason why I think success is dangerous is because when people say success, your success means something totally different than me. And then how can I really help support you on that journey if your success metrics are completely out of your control?
Right.
That's a dangerous place to be in, especially as a creator. Because
right.
You'll think you're failing when you don't realize, I mean, that's the route, that's the way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people get really romantic about the destination when it's really about the journey at the end of the day. And I know a lot of people say that, but really it is about the journey. It's about enjoying the process. It's about that is the destination. It's like the journey is the destination at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, I have to remind myself about this all the time. I've been actually really blessed about not getting too focused about the outcome, because if I even for this pod or anything that we do, like if I got really romantic about the likes or the comments or the views on this thing, I would stop on day one, right? I would not be. And it's about like, you know, just continue to do something that you love, right?
Completely. And it's funny, like as you said, that's like nowadays that's like that's like almost like a cliche.
It is, but
while it's being very true, and I'm starting to like, I've been really reflecting on that. I've been really starting to realize that it's that plus a heavy hand of accountability to myself.
What do you mean?
To what I'm creating, as in, if I'm not content and I'm not hitting whatever metrics or whatever. If I'm like plateauing and I'm not hitting where I want to go, well then whose fault is that? And is it because I'm not putting into the work in these kind of key areas? Because I think too much times people like that topic of like the journey, the experience, of course you gotta put out content consistently. Of course you gotta be getting your reps in. That is definitely part of it. And if you don't love that, of course it's gonna be you're gonna stop before you finish. However, I think too many times that we don't hold ourselves like accountable to getting and achieving those results, or studying the processes, or doing those A and B testing just to help develop that growth.
Is that something you're struggling with?
Growth?
Just the accountability piece.
Oh, 100%. 100% accountability piece is something I struggle with.
Yeah.
Because I was on this other podcast just recently, and we were discussing about like, how can a creator train and ladder up? How can I become a better creator? And one of the ways I realized how to become a better creator, and I think it's like the number one hack out there, it's through therapy.
What?
Learning more about myself, what makes me tick, what makes me mad, what makes me happy, what makes me frustrated, what am I doing with my life? How do I trigger my own burning passions? Is exactly how I can like navigate this space. Because whether it's the climb, whether it's when I hit certain thresholds, whether it's feedback that I'm getting in a comment, can I handle that? Can I stomach it? Can I take that pressure? And I think we don't spend enough time understanding ourselves, reflecting ourselves,
right,
and seeking better ways to, develop systems and processes around, again, understanding ourselves. We spend so much time on research, we spend so much time studying and being like a knowledge thinker, but how much do you spend a week, a day, just understanding what makes you tick?
Right.
especially in this busy world that we live in, especially in this kind of distracted world that we live in with so much content information bombarding us. And now with AI here, where there's kind of nothing outside of our fingertips, from generating content to consuming content to just getting lost in the weeds of it. Well, then how do you navigate that?
Yeah. You're right, and we're so inundated. To take time to reflect, to take time to sit down, and what therapy is great, or just like this is my therapy. I just like be able to talk out loud and think and like pick your brain and stuff like that. No, that's a really cool point. I think accountability is, it's almost like, it's like 90% of it. It's just like 100%. Just showing up and just, being able to put in the reps on that.
Yeah.
So listen, next dangerous idea is this. And it goes to this idea of like, I feel like there's like this chase for all this content. But my belief is that, and the dangerous idea is that a lightning strike, like waiting for a moment, waiting for something to drop, a lightning strike is more powerful than any sort of micro creation that you're doing. Like, it's like you stop time, right? And I've just had this experience in terms of whether it's having an event or dropping a book and having everything consolidate against a particular time or moment or week, and I just feel like if you can capture everyone's attention, that is way more meaningful than just dropping things here and there. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think you're 100% right, but it kind of looks different. So I think content in itself is a lightning strike.
Wow.
Long form content in itself.
A long form content is a lightning strike.
Is a lightning strike. And the reason why I say that is this podcast, depending on what's going on in the world, depending on topics, depending on what we're talking about, depending on what's happening in our respective lives, you have a guest who blows up, but now you finally have this piece of content that's floating out there in the ethos, then that content will blow up. And I think sometimes lightning strikes, I've heard your philosophy around that. And I think it's around having sort of key pillar pieces of content information that's out there and having a number of things that kind of line up that it has that convergence, has that compounding effect. So the more long form content you have, there's people who are watching this who you don't know is watching it.
Right.
There's lurkers out there who are consuming information who might come across it today. The algorithm, for whatever ridiculous reason, might decide to make a couple pieces of your content go viral or catch some momentum while you're on tour, while you drop your book, while you're doing certain things. And I think that content in itself is series of lightning strikes. And the more that you can put out there from a pillar standpoint, and yes, when you have bigger pillar pieces of content, such as a book, keynote speaking, or even to more fundamental things that crosses different mediums, then you're just putting more chips on the table. You're just planting more seeds, and then that's when the harvest starts to happen, when these things start growing.
To me, that's not a lightning strike, though. A lightning strike is something that, like, you have something big that everyone, you can't help but notice. It's like, it's something that, just freezes the world just for that moment, right? Whether it's through social or like, you just, and because the reason why I'm saying this is because I'll meet so many people and they'll be like, oh yeah, you like did this thing or like this, or like, didn't you have this person on, or like, or don't you, like, we joked about this, like, oh Bobby, like, don't you have that clothing store? Yeah, like, you're in esports, right? Like, it's just like
totally,
like, people are not paying attention to us,
totally,
and they're not paying attention to anything that you're doing. And because of even people that are close to you, they're not even paying attention to
100%.
But so when you do a lightning strike,
yep,
when you have all your resources and time focused on one particular thing, and do that in different ways, like put out, a great example is like, we have, we've done a couple events, like we did our bold, when we launched our thing on Apple TV and Prime, right? We had an event.
Yep.
And a great event is a great lightning strike.
Yep.
Because you invite a whole bunch of people at once, and you make it look nice. Then everybody's sharing things out on their stories, and then people take notice. They're like, oh wow, something is happening. Barbie, it's a lightning strike.
Yep.
It's like everything culminates to this event, this moment, and then people are talking about it and sharing it, and that's how you can maximize someone's attention, because when they see something like they see this thing, they're like, this thing is always going on. And then people are not paying attention. A lightning strike is like a vent.
So
it's a moment, Bobby.
So I'm curious, Shawn, because I'm going to push back on this for a little bit. Your book launch. Actually, I'm kind of curious. Your book launch, how many people attended that event?
The actual pre-event book launch, I think maybe 200, 250. Yeah.
And that was by the way, that was a dope event, crazy experience.
Appreciate it.
You consider that a lightning strike?
Yes.
So you have on the Dangerous Minds podcast, the Instagram page, you have like a video that went like 33K.
Yeah.
Is that a lightning strike?
It's a good question. No, it's not a lightning strike. That is a slot machine. That's the slot machine just like rewarded that.
Because see, I would consider, based on your I think that would be a lightning strike. And the reason why I think that'd be a lightning strike, depending, and I don't know, I didn't dive into the comments to see if there's people engaging with it. I don't know if it just got strictly views. I don't know what that was. But like, if you caught that while it was climbing, and so obviously that started at 0. And I don't know if that thing just climbed or one day you posted it, it got a few thousand, and then it just, the algorithm just took it. But I'm wondering is if you capitalize on that in whatever capacity, whether it's that you drove like a comment on there and you pinned it at the top to say that, hey, by the way, I have a book out for this, or hey, come send us newsletter for this, or depending on the topic around what was said in there, I'm wondering how much would that have performed in comparison to your 200-person event?
Right.
Because I would dictate that is a lightning.
I like your thinking on this.
And the question becomes now, how can I put lightning strikes at scale?
Right.
And I think content's an ounce, and that's why I'll go back again.
Wow.
Whether that's a short form piece of content, or I personally think it's actually long form piece of content. I think that's how you have multiple lightning strikes that then have that compounding effect. Because again, in my many past of doing activities, I used to host a series of events called tastemakers events.
Yeah.
And these were, again, about 200 to 150 small person events. And those events were impactful and they were cool, but boy, oh boy, like they were hot for the minute and then they drop off because the event's done. And I think there's no scalability to it. I don't think
there's no scalability.
And there's no consistency to that. Versus content is just a different beast altogether.
Yeah. So I guess it's like, for you, it's like, you know, content, long form content in this perspective is a lightning strike, because it's like, how do you capitalize on that strike?
And it's timeless, and it's something that will always go beyond my actual, like, it doesn't require me. Like once I put the time in, once I do the activity, then it just lives on.
Yeah.
Like personally, and we've had this discussion, like I would love all of your keynotes. All the keynotes you've done. I would love that content. I would study it. I would break it down.
That, yeah.
I would enjoy that so much. And I know you don't put that out there due to, I can imagine, whatever agreements, contracts, the work that you're trying to do or whatever accordingly. And the reason I bring that up is like, I think all of those moments as you've engaged, I'm sure some of your most powerful keynotes where you lit the room on fire. I'm just wondering what that would do to an online audience. I would love to see what that would do to those lightning strikes across the internet.
You know what? You're hitting on something that I'm holding myself back on, which is I fundamentally know that putting out my long form keynotes, like a 60-minute keynote, which we all have. We have like hundreds of them. Mm-hmm. If I just put those out, I know that I could grow a following based on that. Mm-hmm. And I want to do that. Like I want to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. I think part of the reason I don't is because there is a part of me that is like, well, people are paying for this, right? So when I go to another event, there is something to be said about like, I love having content out. Like I probably have more content out than any other keynote speaker other than Gary Vee. Yep. Like I actually could, in terms of me speaking on a stage, yep. I think there's nobody else on the planet that has more video content of me on a stage yep. than Gary Vee.
Yep.
Gary's a nutcase. Oh, like he like his amount of, I'm just surprised at how much keynotes that he puts out there. And it's actually incredibly inspiring because although he does say, similar things in every keynote, actually they are fairly unique. In it, you know, and the Q&A is unique.
Yeah.
And I think I do have unique keynotes, but they're not as unique because I feel like I'm still at the point where I can't show up to an event and have 60 minutes of just flow. Totally. Like, to me, Gary Vee has fuck you money, right? He has fuck you brand, and he can show up anywhere and not prepare. Yeah. And I mean, he might prepare, but it looks like he's not prepared. And I can't do that, right? Mm-hmm. I can go to a keynote and maybe have 70% of it baked or 80% of it already baked. And the third percent is me like improving and customization and whatnot. I mean, I would love to get to a point where I can just drop like 100% new content and just keep dropping that every single week. That's what basically like the Daily Show does, or, you know, Hassan Minhaj did on Patriot Act. Like, I would love to get to that point, and we are going to do that. Yeah. Because I know that's the only thing that's holding me back is being able to post this like long form content. So you basically hit on like one of my vulnerabilities, which is like, I know I need to do this. Yeah. It's just like, I don't know.
And I can imagine this podcast is you building up to that.
Yeah.
Because like clearly, this is not a scripted podcast. Like you're going off the dome. You're going to bring in different insights and thoughts around that. And it's funny, like, when I see what content you put out, like which I really enjoy sometimes is your crowd work. Like when you're asking a question, when you're dropping a riff off what someone says from the crowd and things like that, and giving their take and spin on it, like that's so dope. And I don't, Shawn, I think you don't give yourself enough credit. Like, I'm wondering if you put the pressure on, if you're putting out all of your content out to the point that, yes, you have to you have to innovate your style. You have to innovate the way that you produce and create. You have to, yes, have some of the foundation pieces, but relatively, you have to always put something else new. I think you would just deal with it. I think you would work with it. And I think it would be, more work off the beginning, but I think eventually you'd catch the cadence and flow just to make sure that then you're always delivering something unique, while, yes, just like Gary repeats himself all the time.
Yeah.
Like he's constantly repeating himself. Yeah. He has his like anchor pieces and points, but it's always refreshing takes. And with the way that you always incorporate pop culture and the current landscape of things, because I was like, this morning, I'm sitting here reading all like Apple News. I'm like, okay, Shawn might just bring up something random, what happened this weekend, or what happened a few hours ago.
Yeah,
so let me get a quick little read on that. But like that take that you do is so dope. And so again,
I appreciate that.
Not to blow up.
No.
Big,
This
but
is good. This is good. This is good therapy. God, man. No, this is good, and I know I can do it. And you know, for example, like when I do come up with like most of the stuff that you see online is probably the stuff that I've said for the first time, which is kind of crazy to do because you want it to be tested, but
or test outline.
What's that?
Or test out in the open, build in the open.
Yeah, just build. Yeah, you like I love testing, obviously in person, and see how people react to it, and I love testing it online too to see how people react to it. Like for example, this piece around which you commented on. I appreciate you commenting on, which is talking about my mom and the fact that her legs are not good and whatnot. And that was a long clip, and I normally don't even post like a long clip like that on IG or other places. But I'm gonna put it up. And by the way, I'm not gonna say that content anywhere. That's like unique content for that conference because they're a home care conference. I'm not gonna say that content anywhere else. But it's like, it was a reminder to myself. I'm like, this content actually resonated not only in the audience but online, and it was like a bespoke 5-minute piece that, man, I should just do more of that.
100%.
Yeah.
Because like, so I have this thing I always say that like,
I love this. Became a therapy session for me. So I just
like, I'm a big component that social media is like what it is. It's like a tool to help you build one-on-one relationships at scale. And when I saw that piece about your mom, because like I lost my mom. My mom passed away from cancer. And when I sort of came across that piece, like that just hit home. Like that allowed me to kind of build a stronger relationship with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you put out that information sometimes that has like a story to it or has a little bit more, I want to say, depth, I think sometimes you don't know how many people would like resonate with that.
Yeah.
Or how many people could feel with that, and how that could kind of like emotionally engage with someone. Because whenever I'm producing content, I'm always saying in the back of my head, like, how can I emotionally engage with someone?
Yeah. I'm thinking in the same way, which is like, how do I connect with somebody, right? I'm trying to bring up an idea, but how do I connect it to them? And that's why I do bring up, my kids or my mom or things that I'm thinking about, because I think the more authentic that you are, the more it's going to connect.
Completely.
Like, especially if I'm on stage somewhere, I feel like there's a disconnect, because it's like, I'm here, you're here, right? So I'm just, the whole keynote is just me 60 minutes, me desperately trying to connect with you and trying to give you some sort of information that might change your business or whatever. That's the whole process. It's actually purely just about connection.
And I'm curious, how do you prepare for that? Like, how does one build that in to kind of have that outcome that you're actually connecting with someone?
Well, you don't know if it's going to connect, but you try to just lean into your authenticity. You try to build a story that, connects with you. I like some of the best talks that I've ever done, or the things that hit me, like, I'm like, whoa, this is hitting me. Like, even like, it's not even the keynotes, but like, if I'm doing I remember I did a talk at a wedding, and I was talking about the couple, and it was a difficult, it was one of my friends, Ahmad, he was Persian, and his beautiful wife is black, and they had a difficult time, like, coming together. Like, the parents weren't, totally vibing, right? Yeah. And when I was writing that, like, I was getting like emotional writing it, right? And so when I feel it myself, that's when I know that it's gonna hit with the audience. So like, I have to feel it, right? And if I'm not feeling it, like when I'm writing about my mother, like, I'm feeling it, because that is pain to me. Like, that is, and so I know that's the only barometer, right? Is yourself. Because that's the first time that you're saying it. So how is it gonna hit?
Totally, and I couldn't agree with you more. I remember I took this course that was, so I have been obsessing so much around storytelling, and about how to, again, get more connected and engaged with myself, because to your same point that you just said, how can I expect my stories to engage people, to have that emotional connection, if I'm not even emotionally connected to the story or what I'm saying with my own mouth? And sometimes I realize that, like, sometimes when I talk, it's like I talk for the sake of talking versus talking out of like pain, anger, frustration, happiness, joy, like an emotion. Yeah. And I've realized that, like, when you can speak with emotion, that's when it does resonate. That's when you can kind of jump through the lens. That's when people who are on the opposite side of stuff from different parts of the world, whatever they're going through, will stop and be like, holy shit, what's going on here? Whether it's like something really dope and cool, all the way down to something painful, it's like resonate with me. And I realized, again, I don't know, that's like another unfair advantage.
Yeah. No, it's funny, because we've been talking a lot about just this idea of content, smartphones, etc. And you're a father. And I want to ask you this question, because I've been having this debate with a lot of people, which I think is another dangerous idea, that this anti-smartphone movement is going to be the most important revolution of our time. Okay. And as a father, I don't know where your stance is on the smartphone, because we're all content creators here, right? We love social. We love the idea of putting out our ideas out in the world, and having those scale. That's the slot machine that you find it inspiring. Yep. But thinking about putting the other hat on as a parent, like, do we want our kids exposed to this slot machine?
So I imagine when you say smartphone, I imagine you mean like the apps and tools that's all associated with the smartphone.
Yeah, I think a phone, like a dumb phone, like or they call it a kale phone, like being able to answer a call and text. I'm not talking about that. Yeah, you're talking about. I'm like a smart phone.
So I'm actually, it's funny. I am such a tech nerd enthusiast. I love it. I breathe it, and I'm anti it for children. Yeah, and my kids will not have it. And the reason why my kids will have it, but like in steps, is because now, instead of people living experiences, they're experiencing things for the first time through digital platforms and spaces. And I think there's a danger in that, because instead of me trying to be, whether it's to understand myself, whether it's to simply to play and engage with others around me, I think doing it behind a screen is such a disconnect, and I think that starts to build like unhealthy habits. So,
and by the way, can I, as context for the audience, Bobby was a world-class esports gamer. He literally spent like, years perfecting like being in front of a screen on a world stage. And you are saying you don't want this for your kids.
And here's the other thing, take a step back in the hypocrisy. I distinctly remember when I was coming up in this gaming, my parents would write notes about my time I would spend on the gaming. My parents took away their computer, and then I had to go build my own computer because I wanted to continue gaming. Yeah. I remember they would, this is a story I mentioned a couple times, but what they got really smart of doing, because they would take all my power cords or my keyboards, and I would buy multiple keyboards or power cords and just replace them. And so they got smart one day, and what they did is they disconnected the internet to the house. Yeah. So I was devastated, like devastated.
How old were you?
And this was grade 8.
Wow. Okay.
So what I did is I called up Shaw, and I pretended I was my father. And I gave him all the information. I'm like, hey, I'm Robert Tyndale, and I'm here to, right now, I just want to re-sign up my internet. And by the way, I want to put a password on it because I never wanted to get disconnected again.
Right.
And so I locked my family out of the internet so they could never do that to me again. And so I was like gung-ho about being on the internet. You couldn't stop me. But the reason why I think that was different is I did also at the same time grew up without the internet. Like I was out there playing with friends and things like that. I was doing different experiences, and that was when the internet was just starting to build momentum. And I think, again, when you live and breathe through these screens, when you have these algorithms that are building these silos around your beliefs and values, and you're not necessarily, you get a twisted perspective on the world. And the reason why I'll say the word twisted perspective is these silos, these algorithms are creating these echo chambers that are now starting to shape perception of what your reality is. Whether it's the world, you think the world's this bad, where you think all these people who believe or who like this particular president or individual or have these beliefs and values means this, and so we're no longer dialoguing or talking, I think that puts you in a very dangerous place. Yeah. And so to adjust that, to kind of combat that, I think you have to do that in like stages. And the last point I'll just say to that is, and again, I'm the person who will reference articles and not remember the article's names or details, but I came across this article that was talking about how young boys in this coming up generation are in so much trouble. Why? And the reason why is because they don't know how to even talk to girls. They don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to engage. They have to do stuff behind a screen. They don't know. They're inherently, just because of porn, because of how accessible things are, because of the internet and things like that, they are, bottom line, going to be the future weirdos. And so when I think about that, I'm like, well, whose fault is that? That's not the internet's fault. That is not these gigantic multi-billion-dollar porn platforms, things like that. It's 100% the parents' fault. Yeah. We have the control. We have the accountability. And yes, they can go to their friend's house. They can go to many different places to kind of access these things. But like, it'll be my job to kind of shape and try to get my child, and I have 2 young boys, one who's 18 months, one who's 4 years old. I have to get them ready to deal with this technology, to utilize it, to take advantage of it, but then also to understand when to disconnect from it, how to focus. Love it. And without some of these traits, just to hand them a smartphone, that's a dangerous thing to do in a world that, like, these small phones, you can do anything.
What age should a kid have a smartphone?
It depends. Depends on the maturity. Depends on how the growth. It depends on what the parents are doing to get them ready and prepared.
I think no kid should have a phone before 18 years old.
18?
All of them. No.
And I think that's arbitrary. It depends.
No, but no. Let me give you the bull case for it. Mm-hmm. If no one has the smartphone, no one's going to be left out. And I think high school is a formative time. Mm-hmm. Right? It's already difficult already. Mm-hmm. You're adding literally a bomb by adding a smartphone in that mix. Why don't you just let them like just enjoy high school without having the phone, in the mix? And then, after it, just like any other addiction, like we will all agree that this is an addiction. 100. Right? So if all the other addictions are available after 18, let's just make this, and we're both coming from a place of like, I love tech. I'm an AI guy. We're your social, we're content creator. Like, And it's funny, I always find it interesting that the people that create the most or the most AI or the most tech driven, they're the most anti. Because I believe that actually being able to like develop a friendship, being able to have a conversation for like 5-6 hours, being able to pick up a girl is actually become a disproportionate skill. Like going 100%. and the phone is not gonna help you with that.
Nope.
It's not gonna help you with that.
Nope.
Like you're not gonna develop game on the phone.
Nope.
It ain't gonna happen.
Nope.
So 18, I think is a good. I just think that's a good time.
It is, but like it's funny that will never happen.
Fine.
These platforms, these companies will.
I think 16 might happen.
Why do you think 16 will happen?
You know what? It's funny. A couple days ago, the Alberta government actually sent out this like thing. It was like a survey to all the parents, like asking this question. And I actually think the government should get involved in this. This should be a government thing. And you know, I had a doctor over the other night. It's funny. There was 4 of us. We had a couple. We had the conversation about this, and the doctor, she's a pediatrician. She was like, "Well, you know, but you don't want people to be left out, right? You don't want if some people don't have a phone and some people do. You don't want them." I'm like, but if no one has it, then they're gonna remove that barrier, and then kids can be just kids at the end of the day.
Totally,
because my biggest fear is not like my kids not being on their phone, like being on the phone, not being on the phone. My fear is that you've already let your kids on the phone. And now your kids are going to play with my kids and they're like, hey, Bobby's kids are already on the phone.
And you don't think you don't think it's too late? Like that is not even already happened, but that's like here to stay.
But what I don't even know what it means by too late. Like
because
what is too late? Like look at your parents or like, you know, look at your father or my mother, like they're already phone natives. I don't care how old you are. You can be 90 years old and be like proficient in taking and editing your selfies. What do you need? Because
I'm always like debating with my wife in regards to like how are we going to prepare them for the future?
Yeah.
And how do we get them ready? And there's certain components, like just like on this topic, it's like, do I train them to like navigate a system in a world that I can't take away their phone necessarily, and they don't have no phones, but like for me to take away their phone, will they just find a new way to adapt and just to like exist with having a phone, or should I get them ready on how to utilize it and use it as a tool? And it's something that we're always like yin and yanging about, because I agree with exactly what you said. I think that would be such a beautiful component in world that if there was no cell phones for any youth under 18, under 16, amazing. But that's not the reality. That's not the world that we live in. And it makes me kind of always like at times have anxiety about is like, well, how do I just get them prepared for that? How do I do that?
That is absolutely, we do need to prepare them. And and it's going to change, right? Like we're talking about the phone as it exists today. The variation of what that's going to look like in the future is going to change when our kids are like 16, 17, right? So,
and then when that, you know, VR headset glasses of the world comes in, like, boy, we're already locked into our phones.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to be locked into that.
Anyways, I just think that it's going to be an important discussion as we move forward. I know lots of people having a discussion around it. So it's
And sorry, what's your stance on that?
Oh yeah, we're gonna try to push off as much as possible.
And
I mean, I'm talking shit right now because like our kids are 7 and 5 and 1.
Yeah.
So like, but like we're gonna try to push off as much as possible.
And I'm curious, has your 7-year-old started making reference points about it? Has their like friends of friends of friends? Have you seen them already have cell phones? Because
like our nieces, our nephews have phones. And they're older; they're like 13 or whatever. But I think part of the reason why I do not want them to have phone is because I see them. I'm like, they're literally, they can't even like have conversations. They're just like locked in the entire time. Like at least we learned how to have a conversation.
100%.
We learned how to like look somebody in the eye and like put away the phone and like enjoy. Right.
We know how to be bored.
Exactly. I mean, and I think it is. I saw how, and I think seeing those kids. And by the way, there are. I went to an 18-year-old's birthday family friend recently. I was in a room with all of them, like really cool kids. Like there was like 10 of them. Not a single person was like on their phone. They're all talking, discussing. They're helping my kids. They were like it was really, really cool. So maybe it's like, maybe like Gen Alpha is going to be like, maybe Gen Z, maybe our generation, the millennials and Gen Z, maybe we're gonna be fucked up, and the Gen A is they're gonna come up and they're like, you guys were just inhaling this shit We know this is not good. Like we saw you. We look at you.
Maybe. I recently went to a Sweet 16, and really it was just like everyone head down on the phone.
Wow.
And I was just so confused. And this was a party. I mean, there was a DJ, there was lights, it was like dim, and it was a party. And I was just like, this is crazy.
Crazy.
And to be honest, it was scary. Wow. I thought it was scary.
Yeah. No, 100%. I would be scared of that. Man. Okay. Let's go. Before we get to hot topics, I want to give you another hot topic, which is I actually believe that the most dangerous people, the most successful people, the most thought-provoking people are the people that have empty calendars. And I believe this because recently I've been trying to like coordinate some like meetings with like some government folks, and God bless people in government. They're doing a great job, but for some reason their calendars are full. and I want to see the outcomes of all these calendars that are full. I'm like, somebody literally sent me a note. She's like, this person is like an assistant deputy minister. Their time is very. I'm like, I swear to God, I will have conversations with CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies, and they're able to get on a phone call. Yeah. I've seen multi-billionaires be able to respond to a message right away, like within seconds.
Yeah.
And yet with government, like, and I just find that like the more free that you are in your calendars, you not have these useless meetings. The more dangerous that you become. How free is your calendar?
My calendar is very free. It's as busy as I make it as busy.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So whenever there's like an opportunity or something that I want to do, I make room, just push things around and do that. That's a very interesting take. And and again, where my head's going, because just recently,
this is not a new take, by the way, because I know like Warren Buffett, somebody like looked at his calendar and he has like literally nothing on his calendar. He's just like, it's completely empty or something like that. I don't know how true that is, but like. And Warren Buffett, I guess he's of like trading. So,
but it's funny. Like I think whether it's government or people who are just busy in terms of like sometimes those like 9-to-5 like roles that they don't actually have complete autonomy, control or stuff. You're right. Like how dangerous are they in comparison to someone who can drop everything on a hat and just go attend this, do this activity, do that thing? I think it's two different experiences. Just recently, like our government here created a Black Advisory Council that myself and 10 others were successfully appointed to. And I started to get my little bit taste of how there's government officials and how their scheduling works and how there's kind of like, sometimes meetings about meetings that attend and that kind of creates that busy nature. But you're right. Like when it comes to like entrepreneurs or solopreneurs or bottom line people who have complete control whilst also being golden handcuffs to their schedule, I think there's like an interesting dynamic of being able to drop everything, so to speak, and attend a podcast, go to a show, go to a conference, or just show up to like a lunch meeting or something 100%. Like that. And I think in that dynamic, yes, but then on the flip side of that, I think having a schedule and having a calendar that's like disciplined and that you're focused on and that you're delivering and executing on, and you have your periods that nothing can penetrate, that's so important.
Listen, well, I'm glad. And although my calendar, because of travel, is like pretty crazy. If you email me or you text me, I'm on it. I'm on it. So,
and even when you're on the plane, because I know I've like texted you sometimes back and forth, like, I'm on the flight right now. I'm like, what, Shawn? I can get a hold of you while you're flying. And so
I'm the most available when I'm flying. So hit me up when I'm flying. I'm available. So listen, what we do in the last like little bit of the pod is we hit up some like hot topics. On Saturday, the TikTok ban in the U.S. It looks like it's happening. It looks like they're going to sign this week. I think Biden has to officially sign this.
Yep.
I don't know if they can divest right away. Like, I don't know what the time period is. But it looks like this TikTok thing that we've been talking about for years, 4 years, 5 years, it looks like the ban is finally going to happen.
I think it's going to be like a year from now-ish.
Oh, okay.
I read something like that. But
after he signs it, it's going to be a year?
Yep.
So what do you think, it's like the world is ending for TikTok creators in the US. What do you think the move is? Like like I can't imagine, if the world is ending, it's like the apocalypse. What do you do in the last like hour?
I think for other creators, you triple down. Push
what
all.
Do you mean?
Like you triple down to TikTok because there's going to be a land grab.
No. Wait. You said to triple down on TikTok.
On TikTok.
If you're talking about U.S. creators, or you're talking about Canadian creators, or
Canadian creators, or everyone outside of the U.S. Because it's funny, like that whole topic, that whole thing is such an interesting dynamic. Because I remember I was reading about how Facebook is lobbying against that to make it happen and things like that, because they want them off the platform, they want them off the U.S. market so they can hold on to it.
Yep.
And I know a lot of creators who've said like, well, I won't, if it dies in the US, then I'm not going to produce here in Canada. I think that's crazy. I think when there is these shifts, if there's no more US creators on, and let's be honest, the US market produces a ton of content for TikTok.
Yeah.
Just imagine how much availability there would be.
But I thought about this too, as a Canadian creator. However, the culture is dictated by the U.S. usually.
Yes.
And so you're actually going to have 300 million people that are not on it anymore.
Yes.
So you're basically going to be on a platform without U.S., without India. I don't know what other, like...
Yes, but like I think it depends on what's your goal and what you're trying to do.
Well, you said it's a land grab. The land grab for what? Because America's not on there.
I think, true, but like... in the dynamic that there's no U.S. on there and there's no people, I still think there's still going to be people who are going to be consuming and watching it regardless.
Yeah.
And in that dynamic...
it's already a habit, so people are going to watch it.
And then people are going to consume. People are still going to look for that for their news information. And I still think between the VPNs and people moving their IPs, I think there's going to be a ton of people from the U.S. who are still going to be on TikTok. And so I think the question just becomes, depending on what's your strategy or what you're trying to achieve, if you're trying to engage more people to hear your story, to share your content, to potentially buy your products and services, that's going to be an outlet to kind of do it. And when the U.S. then bans it completely and all of the media and all the talks and all the conversations that are happening on it, that's when you make that move.
Yeah. I actually think that this is really dope advice. I think this is dope advice for anybody that isn't in the U.S. is to do this. And I actually think, I'll take it one step further. I think if you're in Canada and you can leverage the commerce elements of TikTok, like the TikTok shop, and being able to export something globally, because the thing with TikTok now, it's like a habit.
Yep.
It's like, whether it's good content or not content, because the US is off, it's already a habit. People are already like, it's like, TikTok, they just want to waste time.
Yep.
So it's like, how do I leverage this moment? I mean, by the way, Canada's gonna follow suit around the US.
Totally.
So maybe it might happen at the same time, but they're gonna follow suit. So maybe it's like, as Canadians, there's a small window too for us.
I agree, and I'm curious. I think that depends, because you're right. We always follow Big Brother USA over there, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so I don't know if you saw this, Kanye, because you mentioned Ye beforehand about a concert. Ye just dropped this remix of Like That, and he was on this podcast, I think it's called The Download, where he said, everyone is excited about the downfall of Drake. That's why they all got in the studio, and it's like everyone ganged up against Thanos, right? And Drake is Thanos.
Yeah.
And even Ye dropped on this remix and took a shot at J. Cole, took a shot at Drake. Why is everybody coming at Drake?
Well, I mean, he's at the top, right? And you know what? If I can give you from the high level my take on that,
yeah,
I really think all of this is so disingenuous.
Why?
Like all these diss tracks and all this stuff, like when you look at hip hop, back in the 90s, those diss tracks were authentic. To be honest, people were dying. People were getting shot at. It was such, a dangerous time to be for that medium to occur. And I think sometimes there's this disconnect. And don't get twisted. I'm not saying that I want that period of time where people were getting shot and people were losing their lives. Because that was terrible, and we lost icons. But now this seems like just a commercial grab. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised if all shot a round table and we're just hey, you know what? This is what we're going to do just to get back up.
Wow, you're calling
this is what we're going to. And I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't say in a million years I never thought this would ever happen. I would not be surprised, because all this is doing is bringing more attention. I don't know who's dropping what projects right now currently, but I guarantee everyone's dropping projects in the next little bit here. And I think this is just a big, it's a big money grab.
It's a big money grab.
And it's just for people to talk and people to have conversations and people to try to digest things like that. And when you see different moves, like, again, I was reflecting on J. Cole's apology. And I was like,
are you a J. Cole fan?
Oh, big fan of J. Cole. And I was like, is this weak? Or is this a reflection of like him just being his authentic self? He's like, screw it, I'm going to apologize. I'm just going to be myself. And in one breath, it is weak. But in the next breath, it's like, well, this is not the same hip hop. This is not like the hardcore, to be blunt, like gangbanging, or even to talking about sort of their experiences of what they've experienced in the streets. Yeah. Because let's be honest, they're not living that kind of lifestyle. Some of these multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar empires and artists. And so it just begs the question, like, well, then what is this?
Yeah. And I just find it hilarious that all these guys are all millionaires. They're all like writing poems, and they're all just talking to each other. I just find that just hilarious. And yeah, you know, maybe it's just for clicks, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just for, I just find that interesting that, you know, everyone is trying to like team up on Drake. And I actually think this makes Drake more powerful.
Totally. Because like clearly they're trying to dethrone the person who's at the top, right? And I don't know, I think in that culture, and to go back to the beginning where you said like hip hop's on decline, well, I see this as like another like badge of being in decline, and this is a way to kind of get bumped up, or just being relevant, or just being put on the headlines across all these mediums. Because I don't know, when I see articles from the BBC talking about this, you know, their take on it, and all these other, you know, publications, their take on what's happening in this hip hop scene, I'm just like, I don't know. Like, this just seems disingenuous. It just seems like it's a money grab and a click grab, and it's just like,
I like it, man.
To put those, you know, get those projects that much more attention on it. While, to your point, these multi-millionaire are writing poems about themselves and about other people in their multi-million-dollar studios. Like, come on now.
It's just, yeah. Well, listen, Bobby, this was incredible. We got vulnerable. We got some dangerous ideas. I really appreciate you coming on. I told you it took a long time, but we had you on. But I appreciate you coming on, man.
And Shawn, I just want to say thank you for having me. And again, respect on the beautiful studio. This podcast is amazing. I love the concept. I think sometimes we don't give our roses when our roses are due. And I again appreciate having me, and excited for seeing future episodes and things like that.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. Rate, review, subscribe, whatever you got to do. Thank you, guys. See you in the next one.